Hey, gorgeous you. Welcome back to the Infinity Within coaching podcast, where we work together on getting out of toxic relationships, toxic normals, and what it means to step into your authenticity and into that opportunity, that possibility of building your dream life. Because those of us that were born into unhealthy parenting situations, we learned some really ugly and evil things and disconnected things as being normal. And we're going to work on that today. This is a long overdue podcast conversation, and it is episode 77. And I'm excited to be back and talking with you about toxic relationships, toxic people. What are the habits of these people? How do we begin to recognize them? And what do we do about it once we are aware of it? Because the key of becoming aware of something is that it puts us in the headlights for what are we going to do now, right? If we become aware, it gives us the opportunity to make choices and decisions and decide that we want to make changes. So before we get into what are we going to do about it and how do we know if it is, and once we've identified it, what are our options? I want to go to story time. Story time. Today, I had the fabulous opportunity to work on my skills of do not take it personally. As As I get closer and closer to being fully in my authentic space of self, and I get healthier and healthier with reduced symptoms from illness and injury and codependency, I think that it is really great to come together and reflect on these challenges that I experienced because maybe in me talking about them, it will help you to uncover some paths to freeing yourself up from these attacks that we get sometimes and what those can do to the inside of us. So, social media is such a dragon of a beast. It can be wonderful and connecting and bring us the most amazing things. And it can also give people kind of free license from the armchair in the comfort of their own home to sit there and poke, just be mean and cruel and vicious and evil and very, very toxic. And because it's the internet and there's no, you have to sit next across to somebody, across the table from somebody, and have that personal space held where you have eye contact and you are actually accountable for your words, it can get out of control really fast. So today, or actually yesterday or a couple days ago, I put out this very, very benign, small little positive post that said if you don't like if you're not happy with the path that you're on, begin paving a new road. And I ended it with saying that you are courageous enough to do that. Little purple heart. And that tiny little sentence alone just sent this person into volcano flames. And for a little while, I started having a conversation with this person, just, really kind of reflecting back on them, their words and their behavior, trying to get them to be aware of and capable of holding their own space for accountability for themselves. And, you know, unfortunately, as many internet conversations go, it just goes down this black hole of this is going nowhere. And you have to realize at some point, it's kind of a boring story probably because that's pretty much the story. I put out a positive post, woman gets incredibly triggered and reactive and is just seeing this little tiny post. Then she scrolls my page on Threads and she finds a different post and she just gets very reactionary about that. I mean, she's really just come to my page to bleed all over me and make me, well, really, she wants me to redact everything I've ever said. And I'm like, that's just not going to happen. Like, seriously, this is a you problem, not a me problem. So that's really the whole story encapsulated to the point where I finally just said, look, you get to feel and think however you want. Personally, I'm done interacting. I'm done being manipulated into a conversation with you. And I'm choosing to step away. Now, rather than block her, as I've had to do with people through my life, um, I chose to leave the conversation there. I literally just turned off everything in me that was going to react to her because, again, she just continued to blow up my page. But I think that leaving that conversation there is important. One, she doesn't follow me, I don't follow her. And it's important to leave there because people who are in a healing space can go through and see kind of what I'm talking about here on our toxic perception. So at some point, and it was pretty quickly in, I realized like she doesn't have the capacity to be fully self aware. If she did, we wouldn't be in this tit for tat space. We would be in a space of having an honest, engaging conversation about growth and personal awareness, authenticity, responsibility, like self responsibility, but she wasn't capable of that. No matter what I said, she upped the ante in being very passive aggressive, being, inconsistently the victim, inconsistent in her judgmentalness, like, oh, I'm not being judgmental, but that she'd turn right around and be judgy. And she literally said, like, she just wanted a fight. That's how people heal, is they fight it out. I'm like, well, that's very unsafe and very unhealthy. And it gave me this thought that I haven't had a conversation with my podcast people in quite a long time because I have taken a step backward to work on my book that's coming out soon and my products that are fully ready to launch once the book goes live. And I wanted to just get back in the swing of having a conversation about these really unhealthy things and what to do with it, how to spot it, and where to go from here, and how to not let it sink into your soul, right? Because when people attack us, it can feel very personal, but it really isn't. And the thing, two messages in with this woman, I was going like, we are looking through different windows of perception. And I was able to literally say, this isn't about me. And I was able to stay calm, not take it personally. I was able to be assertive with some compassion for both of us, but I was able to set boundaries and walk away. So it's just incredibly important that we recognize when toxic blowups, toxic interactions happen, and that it isn't about us. It isn't about us. So let's talk about some of the harmful behaviors that come from people who have an unhealthy perception of self. And we can lump that under the heading of toxic people. But toxic people are going to be manipulative. They'll try to control others through criticism, guilt pushing, guilt tripping, guilt dumping. They'll they can lead that manipulation right into gaslighting, and any interaction with somebody who is manipulating you is going to leave you feeling a bit confused. And anytime that somebody is leaving you and wanting you to be in a space of confusion, that isn't a you problem, that is a them problem. And the best thing you can do is to identify it and begin to step away. Toxic people are going to lack empathy. They simply do not have the capacity to understand how their actions are impacting the world around them. And it doesn't, kind of one of the things to understand is that a lot of really toxic behavior is not necessarily, what's the right word? Bum, bum, bum. Intentional. But it doesn't matter if it's intentional on their part or subconscious. It's not for us to point out to them. It's for us to boundary, set a, like, this is not acceptable, and step out of that interaction. So, another toxic trait is dishonesty. That we lie or overreact to situations in order to go back to that manipulation and try to get you into alignment of what they want. Okay, all of these things are just pulling you further away from your ability to be authentic and genuine. Toxic people can also play the victim card and make excuses for their behavior. And they'll blame everybody around them for their actions, reactions, or inactions. And I am a big proponent of people being a victim of abuse or victim of trauma or a victim of whatever might have happened to them, because I believe fully that we have to become aware of what's happened. We have to become aware that we were a victim of something in order to heal from it. But a toxic victimization is blaming everybody around them instead of going, holy hell, something's gone on and I need help. They're literally just saying, nothing's gone on and it's everybody else's problem. So they just really want to shield themselves from all responsibility, and that is unhealthy and toxic. They have a draining, exhausting energy. They constantly demand attention, sympathy, validation. It feels exhausting to be around these energy vampires. They are unpredictable. They will lash out. Their emotions are all over the board. It's exhausting to be around the constant whiplash of emotional backlog that you are going to be on with a toxic person. And they belittle or criticize others because it makes them feel better. They don't have to address their own issues. They just look outward to make other people the problem. Always, 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 always. So let's run through a bunch of these traits and, maybe just on one finger or one hand, or just take two fingers and tap together every single one of these traits that you've experienced from a specific person that you now are beginning to understand is about them, not about you. Gaslighting, negativity, manipulation, judgmental, insincere apologies, attention seeking, drama. Overall, making you feel bad for just being you. Violates your boundaries. Passive aggression. Self-centeredness. Always expecting others to serve them, to be at their beck and call. They're judgmental or judgy. Controlling. Lack of self-accountability. Lack of self-awareness. Refuse to listen to you. They have a dishonest streak, or they are practicing dishonesty. They have a victim mentality where everybody else is to blame. They take zero responsibility. They are inconsistent. They criticize easily but do not take criticism well. They are manipulative. They deny any of their own faults. They lack empathy, and they always take more than they give. That is a quick rundown of toxic personality traits or behaviors. And I had asked you to just maybe tap your fingers together for every one of those that you're kind of ticking off. I want you to reflect on that for a moment. We're just going to do a couple seconds of silence. Reflect on how many taps did you do about a specific person, or maybe about a multitude of people in your life that you're experiencing that. We're going to have a moment of quiet. That tapping is just to help you understand the impact that these people or this person is having on you. We cannot have constant criticism, belittlement, tension, and anxiety. There are so many harmful effects beyond emotional exhaustion that having toxic people in our lives pushes onto us. It can erode our self confidence. It can make us feel worthless, anxious, even depressed. A toxic person is going to want to isolate you from friends or family who pump you up, who fill you up, who build your self esteem and build your confidence, who encourage authenticity and genuineness in you, because all of those things in you are going to make them have less avenues for them to vent out that need for toxicity. Okay? These are really unhealthy people, and they are not going to encourage you to be your best self. They may even discourage you from seeking either medical assistance or psychological, mental, emotional assistance or therapy, because they don't want their own behaviors to be brought up. So, what do we do with people who disregard and disrespect our emotional, mental, or physical boundaries, or our personal space, our autonomy? Like, what do we do with them? How do we deal and handle with people who are constantly picking on us and take no responsibility for their behavior? Especially, how do we deal with those people when they've brought more people on board? Like when they've brought, say, flying monkeys, people who knowingly or unknowingly promote and support the messages of the original toxic person. Okay, now make no mistake about it. People who participate in a multitude of those, like when you were doing that finger tapping, a multitude of those toxic behaviors, those are harmful, unsafe behaviors, and it's crucial for your well-being that you recognize this person may even be an abuser in your life. It's certain that they are giving off a multitude of unhealthy and unsafe behaviors. It is certain to me that somebody who has a multitude of those and can't have conversations about their behaviors, that is an abusive, manipulative person that is unsafe. And you need to take a serious look at how this person is in your life and if they should have any rights of access to you. I know, easier said than done a lot of the times, but we're not worried about their feelings anymore. We're worried about your feelings and your personal safety. So let's start looking at some ways to deal with toxic people. First of all, if you had, I would say, more than 3, 4 of those taps on your finger, that you take that as a serious indicator that you have some unhealthy people in your life. And they're not going to be able to hear your boundaries. They're not going to be able to hear and respect your authentic needs to be safe and healthy and independent. So you might have to learn some new tools and some new skills in order to get those people out of your central life, like the people that you deal with and you want to be a part of your life on a daily basis. Okay. We're all going to bump into those toxic people who have no depth perception of how they're interacting in the world because it's always somebody else's fault, just like I had on a social media site today. So, knowing that we're going to bump into those people, we can just have a few skills and go like, okay, that's enough. We're all done playing in the sandbox. I'm stepping away. But that doesn't really help us when those people are people we're related to, when they're people we were born to, when they're people we work for, or when they're people that we mistakenly call friend. Or what if we call that person spouse or parent or grandparent? That begins to complicate and cloud how we can interact with those people. So we have to start getting realistic about getting some tools and help to change what we have normalized in our life. I would encourage you at this point to get to therapy. Okay, so if you're feeling like, oh my God, I have a lot of these people in my life, the easiest, most effective way that you are going to change having all these people in your life is to get to therapy and work with a trauma aware therapist that can help you learn the things that we're going to talk about next and help you on a case by case basis work through the complexities of standing up for yourself in those intimate central relationships in your life. But the first thing you've got to do is start to pour and dump some self love and self worth into yourself because you have to believe that you're worthy of not being treated in those ways that we just discussed that toxic people normalize. You've got to learn how to set boundaries and clearly communicate what behaviors that you will or will not tolerate. And then you have to know how to, after setting the boundary, how to hold and enforce the boundary. Now, sometimes people just need to learn your boundaries and they want to learn those boundaries. They want to respect you. They want to show up for you. That is a green flag person. You can teach that person all day long and love all over them. But oftentimes there are people that we're going to need to boundary out of our life if we've never actively set boundaries and we back to that finger tapping. If you tapped your fingers through all of those, which I could tap my finger through every one of those toxic symptoms of those symptoms of a toxic person because I'm 55 years old and I've had a lifetime of codependency. Of course, I'm surrounded by those kind of people. But the difference is now, after 5 years of therapy, going into 5 years of therapy, maybe that's more reflective. I'll have to count that up later. Anyway, but now going into however many years of self work, I have all these skills that we're going to talk about now to keep those people away from my core spiritual, soulful self worth. And I didn't used to have that. So while I can still tick, 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 tick off all of those behaviors of people who are around me, those people are now in such a restrictive access to me that it doesn't hit the same way that it used to. And I certainly would not start an intimate relationship, friendship, and my boyfriend isn't any of those things, right? Like I've learned enough and I know I'm worthy of so much more now. So, some ways to avoid toxic people and to get yourself out of toxic situations is to set those boundaries. You got to limit interactions. You have to be courageous and know that your worth is so much higher than they're going to be able to honor you with. So you've got to reduce the amount of time that you spend with them and only interact when necessary. Okay? And I'm bolding, I'm underscoring, I am highlighting when necessary. You've got to stay calm, right? So practice meditation, mindfulness, grounding exercises to avoid getting caught up in the emotionalness that they're trying to snag you and hook you with. Don't take it personally. Their toxic behavior is a reflection of their internal problems. It is not a meter. It is not a guide. It is not a reaction to you. It is their internal chaos. You have got to learn to be assertive. Do not allow them to exploit you and be forceful when you need to say no or when you need to say back off. I'm leaving. Okay? Be assertive and stand up for yourself. Be very, very self-compassionate. And you identify, combat, and take all those negative feelings that are going to come as you begin to set these new practices into motion with those toxic people. Uh, if you've ever gone fishing and you've had a fish on the hook, right? And that line, like the fish takes the bait and the line goes tight and the fish tries to run away and you're trying to reel it in and that fish is fighting, man. The whole pole is just bending and slamming around as that fish tries to get away. That is going to be like, that's a really good visual, a really good, like, especially if you've ever fished and you can feel that fish on the line and it's just desperately wanting to survive and get back to life as normal. That is now the battle between you on the bank with your fishing pole trying to catch the fish and them trying to get away from your boundaries. You're limiting interactions, you're staying calm, you're not taking it personally, you're being assertive. That is them trying to get away and get back to their ability to be who they want to be. They don't want to be accountable. So they are that fish trying to get the fuck away from you. But they also are going to push and hit on your boundaries. They're going to try to make you conform and to fall into line. So it's that battle between the fisherman and the fish. You could flip that analogy around however you want to look at it. There is a battle going on for life and death, and they don't want to change. And oftentimes they lack the perspective and self-awareness or the development of self early on in childhood to even have the capacity to change. There are some specific disorders like NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, where they literally lack the self-development to change. So practice your self-compassion. Give yourself a lot of self-love and remember your value. Okay, because your value is determined in your view, in your perspective of self. And that's what they're going to be fighting. So I want you to also take into consideration who you are spending time with. Begin to prioritize spending time with positive people. Surround yourself with people who are kind, who are respectful, who appreciate your honest, genuine needs and your boundaries, who appreciate how you love yourself, who are honest enough to have genuine conversations if they see something in you that is self toxic, that they're able to gently bring that up and hold space in a safe way right? So spend time with people who are good for you. Begin to isolate yourself away from those toxic people. And then this is such a crucial one, and it's so, so hard when we're in that reactionary trauma space where we don't really know when to let go. We don't know when to walk away. But if a relationship of any kind is causing you a great deal of stress and harm, it is time to consider cutting ties. It is time to consider saying goodbye to that relationship. And then I'm going to ask you, just like I did at the beginning of this, to seek professional help. Talk to your therapist about these experiences and begin to prioritize your right to talk outside of the toxic relationship to somebody who can give you a healthy, safe perspective about what's happening. It doesn't mean you ever have to go talk to that toxic person about what you've learned, but it does mean that you now know that there are other alternatives to that toxic behavior and that you get to make the choice to begin to show up for you. Now, all of this is going to bring up an interesting counter conversation. What if I have toxic behaviors? Well, on your journey to understanding yourself more and deeply honoring yourself, you are going to go through some erratic behaviors. And I think the important part there is to work with your therapist, work with your recovery team about being incredibly honest about your own footprint in your life. Get the help and support that you need. Begin to examine your own considered toxic behaviors and see where and what you want to change. You can learn the underlying reasons for those toxic behaviors and you can circle back around and you can genuinely apologize to people that you've hurt with your own toxic footprint. You can apologize, you can make amends, and most importantly, the most important thing about an apology is that you change going forward. Your therapist and recovery team will give you tools and awareness behaviors, awareness practices, like awareness tools to be aware of your behaviors and habits, to build new behaviors and habits that you can practice so that you have new things to go to instead of those toxic normals that you've just been kind of maybe coasting through. And be really compassionate with yourself during these phases of self growth because that is how we become aware and change, and we outsmart the trauma of our past. We outsmart it by recognizing that there is something that we want to change, and we begin to do the work to change no matter how hard it is, no matter where it takes us. That is courage. So, in closing, let's recap tips and tools. It's just kind of a go to plan to respond to toxic people. You want to avoid playing into their alternate reality. Don't argue, don't try to be right. Just identify it. Go, "Ooh, this feels like they're trying to make me feel crazy." Don't get drawn into it. So avoid it. Don't get drawn into it. Pay attention to how people are making you feel and how they are responding when you call out something that's really unhealthy. Talk to them about their behavior, but put yourself first. If they can't handle the truth, then just offer compassion. Don't try to fix them. Say no, walk away. And remember, this isn't your fault. It isn't even your problem. Okay? We cannot fix other people and we cannot make people see things that they're not ready to see or heal from. But it doesn't mean that we have to put ourselves in compromising, risky positions because your life is all about leveling up, creating safe, healthy experiences where you can lean into your authenticity and becoming the genuine person that you want to be. Thank you for joining me on this very impromptu fall edition of Infinity Within Coaching Podcast, where we were talking about toxic people and our own toxic traits, how to recognize that behavior, how to step out of it, and how to distance ourselves from it. In the end, never allow somebody to make their reality your problem. People need to be responsible for their own healing. And you can go through somebody's healing journey with them, but they are responsible for their healing footprint. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you have a fabulous day, and I can't wait to talk to you soon and talk to you again. And I can't wait to tell you more about the book and products coming out in 2024. Thanks for joining me.